The first story comes from our contributor, Xiaosu. At the beginning of the submission, Xiaosu mentioned that since childhood he has been able to see things that others cannot, and that he was more mature than other children his age. His 8 characters are all yin, whether according to the lunar or solar calendar. His birth time falls exactly at the transition from yin to yang. He was frail and sickly from a young age, and even before he was born, the doctor performing the prenatal checkup predicted that he would most likely be deformed. Fortunately, after he was born, his body was generally fine, but due to severe anemia, he had a brush with death right after birth. Xiaosu doesn't know if these experiences count as special. He only knows that not only can he see those beings, but he can also communicate with them, and most of them do not intend to harm him. Over time, he simply divided these beings into 2 categories, good and bad. These experiences, which others couldn't understand, felt like his second life, just like the parallel real world and the underworld in Japanese horror games. This time, he's going to talk about one of the most dangerous experiences he's ever had, a story involving a spirit or demon. That year, Xiaosu was taking a break from school and stayed at home, not attending classes. His father was often away on business trips for long periods, so he hadn't seen him in a while and missed him. Coupled with the boredom of staying home during his break from school, after getting his father's permission, he was brought to stay for a while at the place where his father was on a business trip. The location was a remote mountain village on the outskirts of Xi'an, and just driving to the nearest town took an hour. His father's job was to look after a large nursery. The company boss had leased the entire mountain, planning it full of saplings to be grown and sold when mature. His father's responsibility was to live in this remote wilderness, guarding the saplings so they wouldn't wither or be stolen. 3 small adjoining rooms had been temporarily built next to the nursery. The leftmost was the living room, the middle was the kitchen, and the rightmost was the bedroom. The bedroom was piled with various equipment and had 2 bunk beds like those used in dormitories. Xiaosu slept on one, and his father slept on the other, with his bed facing the window next to the door. That window was neither sealed nor covered with curtains. His father's bed was on the other side of the bedroom, next to a window that had been tightly boarded up with wooden planks. This place was extremely remote, with only a dozen or so households within several miles, each separated by a considerable distance. Xiaosu was rather reclusive and spent most of his time indoors. When he did go out, it was only to wander and explore the desolate hills nearby. After growing up, although Xiaosu could no longer see those ghosts, his sensitivity to such presences became even sharper. He could clearly sense their aura, and when the feeling was strong, he could even pinpoint their exact location. He said that sensation was like having a pair of blurry eyes that could see the other side of this world. It was during those few days living on the mountain that strange things began to happen. His father often fed the nearby magpies. The cabin had a tin roof, and when the magpies waited to be fed, they would always land on top, chirping and pacing back and forth. But amidst the chaotic sounds of bird claws, Xiaosu could always hear a strange noise that didn't belong. That sound was not as light as bird claws. It carried a heavy weight, thudding back and forth on the tin roof. At first, Xiaosu didn't pay much attention, but before long, an inescapable feeling of being watched began to haunt him. The source was always the roof, as if something was hiding in the shadows staring at him. This feeling of being watched wasn't just a simple glance, it was cold, laced with malice. Thanks to his special constitution, Xiaosu had encountered quite a few malevolent spirits before. Those things were always thinking about devouring him. To them, someone with his constitution was indeed a great tonic, but it seemed he had always been protected by a guardian spirit, and coupled with his usual caution, nothing major had ever happened. This time, he didn't take it too seriously either, thinking that he'd be leaving in a few days anyway, and there was no way the other party could really do anything to him. If it were really that easy to get him, he wouldn't have survived until now, but that thing was getting bolder and bolder, and its range of activity had expanded from the rooftop to outside the house. At first, it only dared to stay on the rooftop at dusk, and as soon as Xiaosu went inside, that feeling of being watched would disappear. But later on, even in the middle of the night or just after dusk, it dared to press up against the window and spy inside. It started with the living room window, then gradually moved toward the bedroom. After that, it began to take action. The doors to the living room and bedroom were usually locked, but the kitchen only had 2 pieces of cloth hanging as a curtain, with no door. So it would take advantage of the darkness to sneak into the kitchen and rummage through things. One time, the father and daughter were having a late dinner. Just as Xiaosu was about to go to the living room to eat, she heard a rustling sound coming from the kitchen next door. She immediately called her father, who came and took her to the living room. After they finished eating, her father told her to go back to the bedroom first. As she passed by the kitchen doorway, Xiaosu could clearly sense that thing was inside, staring at her motionlessly. Cold and ominous. It was not a good thing. Xiaosu hurriedly ran back to the bedroom, silently praying in her heart, hoping it would just take some meat from the kitchen and leave quickly, because she had already clearly sensed that this thing was not a ghost, but something with a physical form. Creatures like this usually have some abilities, and in its eyes, she was just a piece of delicious, effortless prey delivered right to its door. Xiaosu couldn't help but let her thoughts run wild. What should an ordinary person do if they really encounter something like this? Would her father be implicated? It was very clever, testing her bit by bit, probing to see how close it could get. If it went after her father, what should she do then? She was starting to panic but really had no idea what to do. And right at this moment, Xiaosu's father told him that he had to go to the city for 3 days. During these 3 days, Xiaosu would be home alone. His father told him to behave and stay put, promising he would be back soon. On the first day after his father left, the strange occurrences intensified. That afternoon, the thing appeared on the roof, brazenly staring at Xiaosu inside the house. By nightfall, the weather had turned especially bad. The wind was howling, making a wailing sound like a ghostly baby crying. He curled up under his blanket, his back against the door. Suddenly there was a gentle knock at the door. Xiaosu didn't move. Then voices came from outside the door, distant and muffled, like a group of people calling out for their father. Then, a beam of light, like that from a flashlight, shone from far away, landing right on the wall next to his bed, very close to him. Xiaosu thought to himself, with such a real beam of light, maybe it's actually someone out there. Perhaps one of Dad's friends. He turned his head to look out the window. Outside it seemed foggy, grey and hazy, and the wind was still blowing fiercely. Those voices and the source of light felt just like in a dream, faintly drifting in from afar. Because he had experience, he immediately sensed something was wrong. He kept facing the wall, curling up tightly under the covers. But then, a sound came from the doorway, unusually clear, as if someone was walking right up against the door, step by step. The fallen leaves on the ground crunched underfoot, but the footsteps were very light, nothing like the weight of an adult, light and floating, yet carrying a chilling sense of oppression. A terrifying thought instantly rushed into Xiaosu's mind. He knew what it was. Just as he had said before, his inspiration was more like a pair of hazy eyes, able to see a different world. Of course, he wasn't a professional in this field and couldn't explain the reason why. Outside the door was an animal, standing upright like a human, walking on its 2 hind legs. Step by step, it moved to the window and craned its head to look inside. At that moment, Xiaosu was terrified, his whole body stiff. He could clearly feel its human-like eyes staring intently at him. That night, Xiaosu called his grandmother. Because of his special constitution, his family had always helped him deal with these kinds of things and knew some folk remedies, but this time, even they didn't know what to do. He stayed up very late before finally falling asleep. The next morning, following his grandmother's advice, he found some rice and tea leaves, put them in a bag, and kept it close to him. Grandma said this was a folk remedy to suppress wandering souls. When children get frightened, it's easy for their souls to wander off, and this was the only method she knew. The next night, Xiaosu still held onto a bit of hope, thinking that since it hadn't succeeded the previous night, maybe it would just give up, but he was wrong. It came again. But this time, he didn't dare sleep in his own bed. He hid on his father's bed, the one next to the sealed window, listening anxiously to the noises coming from outside from time to time. He felt uneasy all night, constantly searching for solutions, looking things up online and asking friends from the metaphysics community. Back then, Xiaosu was especially interested in metaphysics. He had joined quite a few related groups and made a lot of like-minded friends. One of his online friends, B, had a book of talismans at home. He took it out and snapped a picture of a talisman, saying that this one was useful. It was a Zhongkui talisman. To this day, he still doesn't know where it came from, but he has always been grateful to him. Xiaosu was very nervous, not just because it came to scare him every night, but also because it was getting bolder and bolder. On the first day, it only dared to come in the late afternoon, but by the second day, it was already showing up at noon. But during the day, it would only watch him. He had a feeling that if he didn't do something, on the third day it would come out even earlier. The most terrifying thing was that his intuition kept telling him that at night it would turn into his father, knock on the door, and call him to go outside. That was what he feared the most. On the second day, Xiaosu got up early to prepare. He found some paper but had no pen, so he steeled himself and used his own blood to draw the talisman. He first cut his finger, but the wound always stopped bleeding quickly and he couldn't get much blood out. So he cut his arm, let out a bit of blood, and used a makeup brush to dip it and draw. He really wanted to survive. At the very least, he couldn't die at its hands. But the blood dried too quickly. It wasn't until he had cut several wounds into his finger, layering them and tearing them open forcefully, that enough blood finally flowed out. He barely managed to finish drawing a talisman and firmly stuck it onto the door. After putting up the talisman, he began to recite incantations. Before the sun set, he tried every method he could think of. whether it was praying for divine protection or seeking help from the local earth god. This was the first time in his life he had ever done something like this. He was truly scared. Xiaosu called his dad, and his dad promised he would come home early. He finally made it to dusk. It was quiet outside, and that thing didn't come. Just then, the door opened. It was really his dad. He came home early, carrying a big bag filled with food, 20 Orleans-style roasted chicken drumsticks, which Xiaosu had casually mentioned wanting to eat before. At that moment, he almost burst into tears. That's where this story ends. Later, Xiaosu asked his dad about it, and his dad said that there were always weasels in those mountains. The second story comes from our contributor, Xiao Meng. This happened on August 2nd, 2022 in Dongguan, Guangdong. That day, Xiao Meng came here with her band, a group of 7, to perform, and they stayed at an international hotel together with another performance group. Originally, the plan was to have 2 people share a room, but since Xiao Meng was the only woman in the band, she could only share a room with an auntie from the logistics team. The 2 of them had never met before. In the room, the auntie took bed number 2 by the window, while Xiao Meng stayed in bed number 1 near the bathroom. There was only one thing about the room's layout that felt inexplicably awkward. On the left wall as you entered, there was a floor-to-ceiling mirror, and in the bathroom on the right, there was also a large mirror. The 2 mirrors were positioned exactly opposite each other, perfectly aligned. Other than that, the room was no different from a standard hotel double room, fully equipped with a TV, wardrobe, clothes hangers, and bedside table. But the auntie moved out after just one night. When Xiao Meng woke up the next day, the auntie's bed was already empty. She had packed up all her belongings, leaving no trace behind. Later, Xiao Meng found out that the auntie had gone to share a room with a friend she came with. The large room was left with only her alone. For the first 3 days before the performance, everything was normal and nothing strange happened. The unexpected incident occurred on the 4th night of the performance. After wrapping up work that day, Xiao Meng went with her bandmates and another male singer, who was performing with them, to have a late-night meal at a street food stall, as an early celebration for having just one more day left before the trip ended. During the meal, 2 of Xiao Meng's friends who were about her age pulled her into drinking and playing dice games. After a while, Xiao Meng ended up drinking too much and felt dizzy and lightheaded. In the end, her friends had to help her back to the hotel. Back in the room, Xiao Meng played on her phone for a while, but as the effects of the alcohol hit her, she felt really uncomfortable. Seeing that bed number 2 was neatly made, and since she hadn't showered yet and didn't want to dirty her own bed, she just lay down on bed number 2 and fell asleep. In the middle of the night, Xiao Meng was woken up by a headache and stomachache. She had been so dizzy before falling asleep that she hadn't even taken off her shoes or showered. She just fell asleep fully clothed. After waking up, the headache and stomachache hit her all at once and her whole body felt weak and powerless. She really didn't feel like moving, so she just took off her shoes, moved back to her own bed, bed number 1, pulled up the covers, and went back to sleep. She ended up sleeping straight through until after 10 o'clock the next morning. After waking up, Xiao Meng couldn't fall back asleep. Her stomach hurt badly, so she thought she'd scroll on her phone for a while and wait until noon to go out for a meal. But as she kept scrolling, drowsiness crept up on her again, and with her eyes closed, she drifted off once more. This time, she had an especially strange dream. In the dream, her former co-worker and roommate D was knocking on the door outside the room. He opened the door and roommate D walked in while talking. When he closed the door and turned around, he realized that roommate D was already 10 meters away. But he had been staying in this hotel room for several days and it was impossible for it to be that deep. What was even more bizarre was that there was suddenly a back door at the end of the room that hadn't been there before. Roommate D walked over to the back door, yanked it open, and loudly complained to the outside, grumbling about why the food delivery still hadn't arrived. After venting, he slammed the door shut. Xiao Meng instinctively glanced outside the door and happened to see a boy and a girl standing there. They were dressed in old-fashioned traditional Tang Dynasty clothing, their faces painted ghostly white, with 2 conspicuous bright red circles of blush on their cheeks, clearly looking just like the little ghosts often seen in horror movies. The room in the dream was twice as deep as it was in reality, and the other bed that should have been there had disappeared, leaving only the one he was sleeping on. In the dream, Xiao Meng was still wondering. D, his roommate, was supposed to be working in another city, so why did he suddenly show up in Dongguan? Before he could figure it out, his roommate D suddenly vanished. A chilling sense of creeping terror instantly enveloped him. He instinctively lay back down on the bed, pulled the covers over himself, and closed his eyes. Immediately after, he actually experienced sleep paralysis in his dream. He could clearly feel something manipulating his blanket, trying to suffocate him inside it. He wanted to move, but his whole body was paralyzed. He couldn't even lift a finger. Although Xiao Meng's eyes were clearly open, he saw a dark shadow pressing down from above his head, trying to tightly cover his face with the blanket. He desperately rolled from side to side and ended up rolling right off the bed onto the floor, but the shadow still wouldn't let him go, continuing to pull the blanket over his face. He had heard before that when experiencing sleep paralysis, if you shout for help or curse as hard as you can, it will go away. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't make a sound. In the end, he used all his strength to lift his hand just a little, and the scene before his eyes instantly shattered. He suddenly opened his eyes wide. The moment he woke up, Xiao Meng's heart was pounding as if it was about to explode, his whole body drenched in cold sweat, and the suffocating feeling from before still clung tightly to his throat. Alone in the room, everything felt far too real. Frightened, Xiao Meng dared not leave his bed, curling up under the covers. The room felt unbearably eerie. With an afternoon performance ahead, he told himself, "I'll just sleep to pass the time." He turned away from the empty bed, pulled up the covers and closed his eyes. The light in the room had been on the whole time, very bright, but the curtains were not drawn open. There was a small nightlight at the head of his bed shining directly on his face. He was drenched in cold sweat, constantly feeling as if he hadn't really left the dream, that what had just happened wasn't a dream at all, or rather, that he hadn't actually woken up from the dream yet. He lay on his side with his eyes closed because he could clearly sense that he was not the only one in this room. After all, in that dream just now, there had been a dark figure trying to smother him. Every nerve in his body was taut. He didn't dare relax even a little. Even though his eyes were closed, an incredibly vivid image appeared in his mind. The small nightlight by the bed was slowly moving closer to him, and it was as if an eye had grown inside the bulb, staring at him unblinkingly. Not long after, he clearly sensed someone dressed all in white, weaving through the gap between the two beds, slowly walking up to him, bending down, and leaning in to check if he was really asleep. At that moment, every muscle in Xiao Meng's body tensed up, and he almost started to tremble, but he forced himself to hold back, even making his breathing as light as possible. He was completely awake, fully aware that he was not asleep. Even though his eyes were closed, the images in his mind were incredibly vivid, with every detail crystal clear. Xiao Meng almost burst into tears, but could only keep his eyes tightly shut, gritting his teeth and enduring it until that cold presence slowly moved away. He cautiously opened his eyes, only daring to stare fixedly at the wall in front of him, not daring to move an inch, while his mind screamed frantically. He couldn't move, couldn't turn around. Out of the corner of his eye, he scanned the area he could see, and suddenly spotted a dark figure standing motionless just behind him to the side, staring at him intently. Xiao Meng froze completely, even his breathing stopped. He didn't know how much time had passed before that feeling of being watched finally disappeared, and the dark figure was gone too, but he still didn't dare to move. He waited another full minute, mentally preparing himself, telling himself not to be afraid, that it was fine, that there was nothing there. Then, all of a sudden, he spun around. There was nothing behind him. Only then did the chill that had wrapped around him slowly begin to dissipate. Later, when it was almost time to get ready for the performance, he finally dared to get up, shower, and put on makeup, not daring to dwell on what had happened that morning. After 5 days of performances, when he returned to his original city, he told his roommate D about what had happened. After hearing this, roommate D was stunned for a long time before telling Xiao Meng something even stranger. During the 2 days Xiao Meng was performing in Dongguan, D had indeed ordered takeout, and the delivery was extremely late. He was so angry at the time that he called the delivery guy and scolded him, saying exactly the same words Xiao Meng had heard in his dream. That's all for this episode's submitted story. If you have any strange or bizarre experiences, feel free to share and discuss them in the comments section. I'm Xiao Pai, see you next time.